Hey, good people. Thank you for being here, for choosing to come together across difference again and again and again with the No Kings Coalition. You joined us over a year ago when we made Meaning of the Moment. You joined us again when we said No Kings. And today, as we once again say, hands off our vote. Thank you for continuing to show up in community for one another. If this is your first time joining, I want to give you a particularly special welcome. We don't regard it robbery that you are joining this community. For folks who are going to be watching this recording after the live stream tonight, I want to thank you for tuning in. I don't take it for granted that you're taking time out of your super busy and chaotic schedule to be in community with us together. So thank you too for being here. Good evening, y'all. My name is Ash-Lee Woodard Henderson, and I'm going to be your MC for the evening. While we give folks a moment to tune in, I want you to get your water, get your snacks, take your shoes off, settle in for a bit. You are going to hear from some incredible leaders, and I want to make sure that you can get all the way through, take all the meaning making and education that they're going to give us tonight, and turn that energy into action. I want to give you an opportunity as we're settling in to text a couple of your friends, send them the link, invite them to join us tonight. You can send it to your listservs. You can put it in the group chat. You can text your homies. You can put it on your social media. This is an opportunity that we don't want anyone to miss. And as you are already doing, say hello in the chat. Feel free to tell us your name, where you're calling in from. If you're repping an organization, feel free to do that. And tell us how you're arriving. Please remember that as we're doing that, we might disagree with one another. There is a lot of different feelings coming onto this call. Some of us are pissed off. Some of us are grieving. Some of us are feeling optimistic about the incredible society we can build in the ashes of the old. All of that is welcome here. So we will maybe disagree, but we will not be disrespectful to each other. So if someone starts trolling, I want you to flood the messages with solidarity and love, and I want you to stay focused on the speakers so that we can get these calls to action tonight. Be kind to one another, as you always are. Y'all, we've already got thousands of people on this call tonight joining us this evening. So again, I want to give you an opportunity to break a record, text your friends, hit your group chats, spread the good word that we're together this evening. If you are pissed off about yesterday's Supreme Court's decision, I want you to tell me in the chat, because if you're angry, if you're grieving, you're in the right place. But if you're also trying to figure out how to turn those feelings, which are not strategies, into faithful next steps, you could not have picked a better call to join than where we are tonight. We have an important conversation planned with civil rights leaders who will shine a light on this week's events. And importantly, we'll discuss ways that we can continue to show up and take action together. We'll share links throughout the call, and we'll make sure that all of you know about what the next steps are. If you can't catch it in the chat because there's currently over 7,000 people talking to one another in the chat, do not sweat it. We are recording this call. We will make sure that you get every link, every call to action that we talk about tonight. While we give it another minute for the rest of our folks to join us, I want to invite you to take a second to get grounded. I want to invite you to take a collective breath. You can feel the chair, or the couch, or the floor, or the bed, wherever you are, the ground supporting you. You can close your eyes or take your eyes off the screen for just a moment. And I want you to think about the grief you felt since you heard about the decision. Again, you might be arriving heartbroken because critical voting rights protections that the civil rights leaders before us fought and died for have just been totally eviscerated. But tonight, I want to remind you that we're going to discuss this decision. We're going to talk about Louisiana versus Calais. We're going to, of course, discuss how we will once again continue fighting for our freedom to vote, our desire, our freedom dreams, what we want to feel and be in a liberated society. We're going to recommit to carrying the torch of the civil rights leaders who made unimaginable and immeasurable sacrifices to secure these rights for us. We know that we are the ones we've been waiting for, that no one's coming to save us but us. But just for one moment, I want to hold a little bit of space for all of us to just collectively feel the heartbreak together. to feel the righteous rage, to feel the grief, to do the mourning that comes from this callous decision, this dangerous, this life-threatening decision. I want you to breathe in the truth of how you feel about it. And I want to invite you to breathe out through your mouth that internal censor that's telling you that your feelings are an overreaction or not valid, or maybe other people should feel more upset than you. I want you to ignore all of the skepticism that tells you your feelings aren't valid. And then I want you to take another deep breath in through your nose. Breathe in all of that legacy at your back, all those ancestors, all these contemporary leaders that are putting it all on the line to make sure that we can live in beloved community in a society that values our people over the consolidation of wealth and power of the few. I want you to breathe out any skepticism that we weren't born to win. And then I want you to take one more deep breath in through your nose, remembering that if we haven't won, then the story's not over yet. Victory is absolutely our destiny. And we won't have won until all of us are free. Breathe in through your nose and breathe out any lie that tells you we can't do it. Y'all, I want to thank you again for joining us tonight for what has been an ongoing emergency that we're calling an emergency call this evening. That was brought together by lots of incredible organizations, many of whom will be named tonight because their speakers are on this call, and all of the No Kings Coalition. Let's dive in. So what happened? I'm glad you asked. Yesterday, the Supreme Court eviscerated one of our nation's most sacred civil rights protections. By gutting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, SCOTUS has left people even more vulnerable by not having the same access to fair representation enshrined in the original VRA. This isn't an effort to just get along to get along. This is an effort to silence the voices of millions of Black voters and other voters of color. And I want to remind folks, for over 60 years, longer than some of us have been alive, the Voting Rights Act, which you also will hear people call the VRA tonight, protected the right of Black people and people of color to have equal access to the ballot in this country. And in recent years, the Supreme Court has just been chipping and chipping and chipping away at it, dealing its next blow yesterday with that devastating court decision. We're here tonight to unpack what this means for us, what it means for even the semblance of democracy in this country, and most importantly, what you can do, what we can do together to fight back against this betrayal by the high court. We have experts from the Legal Defense Fund, from the Transformative Justice Coalition, from the mighty Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, from the ACLU, who are going to walk us through what this decision means. So let's get to it. I want to introduce you to our first speaker. I am honored to be joined by Jania Nelson, the oralist who argued the Louisiana versus Calais case before the Supreme Court in October. For that courage, y'all should be already shouting in the chat. I want to tell you that Jania has been leading this fight for our civil rights over at the Legal Defense Fund. Her legal expertise is more than crucial right now as we try to understand the fallout from the Louisiana decision and plan out our next steps in this fight. Jania, it is my esteemed privilege to toss it to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ash-Lee. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be here tonight. Good evening, No Kings community. This is a day for us. This is a tough day. I'm going to be really clear. It is a dark day for democracy. It's a dark day for our country, and I'm not going to mince words. I didn't mince words before the Supreme Court. I'm not going to mince words before you tonight. We have a battle ahead. We lost something precious, absolutely precious, something that so many of us didn't even know was the glue holding our multiracial democracy together, and that is the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Many of us never knew a United States without the Voting Rights Act. We didn't understand that this piece of legislation is what ushered into being a society where we could all expect to vote on an equal basis and have our votes cast and counted. And we could respect the right to vote as something that we all hold in equal measure, regardless of our background, our wealth, where we come from. It was the one equalizing bit of power that we all possessed. And what the Supreme Court did yesterday is upended that by inviting partisan actors to enact maps that will entrench their power permanently and thereby diminish the votes of those people who they've locked out of power. And they are primarily Black voters, Latino voters, our growing Asian population of voters, Native American voters. And that is a huge problem for a democracy as racially and ethnically diverse as ours. So I will not pull any punches. We are in mourning. But we at LDF know how to mourn and fight at the same time. That's something we've been doing for 86 years. We know this. We know how to see impossibility and to confront it and to navigate it and then see the possibility on the other side. And that's what we're doing in this moment. So, as Ash-Lee said, I have the honor of representing Black voters from Louisiana before the United States Supreme Court in this blockbuster case, along with our colleagues at the ACLU, who you'll hear from as well. And yesterday, the court not only struck down Louisiana's congressional map, it destroyed Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And for those who don't know, Section 2 was the last remaining nationwide statute that guarded against discrimination, racial discrimination in voting. And by killing that, the Supreme Court finished off a project that it's been doing for the past 13 years. It's been killing the Voting Rights Act in a death by 1,000 cuts. Some of you may know the case Shelby County versus Holder. This was something decided in 2013, and that took away Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which basically said if there's a new voting mechanism or rule or policy, you got to clear it first with the federal government in certain places because there's a history of discrimination. And we want to make sure that our democracy is moving forward and not backwards, that new laws are not going to make it harder for people to vote. They scrapped that in 2013. Then in 2021, there was a case called Brnovich, which meant to really deal with the voter suppression tactics that we're all now so used to, which frankly came from the fact that we no longer had a check on new voting laws. So the Brnovich decision made it nearly impossible to challenge voter suppression laws like stringent ID laws or making it harder to vote by mail or some of the general ways that we relied on for voting and that were made more difficult by people who looked at the population of voters and chose particular rules so that they could keep those populations from voting. That's what we're talking about when we talk about voter suppression. And then finally, when we get to the decision in Calais, the last area where the Voting Rights Act was really still active in defending against the use of race as a means of entrenching political power. So manipulating Black voters by packing them in districts or spreading them out across a whole bunch of districts so that their power was diluted. We challenged that situation in the state of Louisiana, where Black voters make up 33% of the population. But before we brought a lawsuit, only could elect a candidate of their choice in 1 out of 6 districts. And so by putting on a big case and putting on mounds and mounds of evidence, we were able to convince not 1, but 6 federal judges ultimately that there was racial discrimination in that map where only 1 district allowed Black voters to elect a candidate of their choice. Unfortunately, we were challenged by some white voters in the 2nd district that we got drawn. And yesterday, the court validated that grievance and said that not only was that map that we got unfair, was it unfair, but that in fact, Section 2 as a whole is largely unlawful or certainly unusable based on the new criteria that the court has given us. So this is a significant blow for our country. Every person should feel an acute loss of momentum because we have, for the past 66 years, become increasingly diverse in the leadership of this country. We now have more women, more LGBTQ plus people, more people of diverse ethnic backgrounds, diverse religious backgrounds, people with disabilities. We have such a diverse leadership pool, still not adequate, still not fully reflective of who we are, but better and better as more people come into the body politic, as our electorate becomes more diverse and more empowered. And what the Supreme Court did yesterday was stop that momentum in its tracks by allowing partisan actors to lock whoever they want out of power in order for them to entrench their own. So we have to get out of the business of politicians picking their voters and get back into the business of voters picking their politicians. That's what elections are for. And what I can say is, for us at LDF, we've had a long history of working with the Voting Rights Act. We have not only helped the foot soldiers who fought to get it passed to do so lawfully, but we helped enforce it. We helped to reauthorize it. We helped to amend it. We helped to defend it. We helped to enforce it continually, along with so many other of our sister organizations. So for us, this is personal. This is a real blow. This is one of the tools that we used most often to help perfect our democracy and to make it live up to its constitutional ideals. So we're feeling this acutely. But at the same time, we have always been working on multiple tracks because that's what civil rights attorneys do. That's what people who were able to see past Jim Crow and racial apartheid and win Brown versus Board of Education, that's what people who subscribe to that type of vision do. And so we've been working in states across the country to try to get state voting rights acts passed. In fact, just this week alone, on Tuesday, Governor Westmore of Maryland signed in a Voting Rights Act for Maryland. And he did that after many other states have done the same. Now, of course, none of them are in the South yet. But there is a Voting Rights Act introduced in the state of Louisiana. There's a Voting Rights Act introduced in Mississippi. And people say, oh, you're never going to get it passed in those states. And they're right. You will never get it passed if you don't introduce it. You will never get it passed if you don't start, if you don't socialize the idea, if you don't get it passed in other states so that people can see what a laboratory of democracy looks like somewhere else in the country, and then they clamor for it in their own state. So that's the type of work that we are trying to do in the face of this extreme setback and loss. That is what it is, but it doesn't mean that we don't have tools. And we are continuing to fight on that track. We are also looking at alternative systems of voting. You're probably going to hear a lot more in the coming weeks and months and years about cumulative voting and other systems of voting. And I want us to all be open to that because we have to think boldly and broadly about what is on the other side of this calamity, this threat to our democracy. So those are some of the things that we're also working on. How can we re-envision electoral systems in this country and make them fairer? Maybe we think about proportional representation where everybody gets a representative who can advocate for them. And that makes a lot of sense in our increasingly diverse and pluralistic society. So those are some of the things that we're taking up. And we're also working to make the right to vote meaningful for everyone and accessible equally to everyone. I will flag, though, that there are a couple of immediate threats that I want everyone to be aware of. Within hours of this decision, there are states that took up the invitation that the Supreme Court sent in that opinion to enact maps that are blatantly discriminatory. So we see states like Florida and Mississippi moving forward with maps that are clearly based on discrimination. They were held to be discriminatory, or we challenged them before. There are growing calls for Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, and Missouri to follow suit. Just today, the state of Louisiana suspended its elections so that it could try to jettison the map that we got and replace it with one that was already held to be discriminatory. So that's the fight that we're up against. And what we need all of us to do is to engage. And you can engage, for example, if this is happening in your state, by going to a legislative hearing and being present, showing them that you oppose this. More important, if you can speak up, if you can get on the roster of people who will testify and you can tell them that you want to vote on a fair map, we invite you to do that. Work with a local advocacy organization or contact the Legal Defense Fund or one of our peer organizations. And also be prepared for the upcoming election to just engage. It's important that we are all active in the electoral system that we have. And so I think I will stop there. There's so much more I can say. But as I said, as we mourn, as we say with our full chest that the Supreme Court did us dirty, we can say that. And we can also say that we are unbowed, we are undeterred, and we are not going to give up this democracy that we have been building for more than 6 decades. Not this democracy that is necessary for our safety, for our security, and for the thriving of all people who live in this country. So I'm honored to be here. I invite you to go to ldf.vote and see some of the resources that we have to empower voters and to get in touch with us if you want to engage. We are here. We've been here for 86 years. We were built for this moment, and we are not going back. Thank you.
Janae, we love you. We're so grateful for your leadership. Remember, y'all, go to the website. LDF is dropping toolkits by the dozen to help you actualize this sacred work in a town or a city near you. Make sure you check them out. Janae, we're so grateful for your leadership and your courage. Y'all, our next speaker is Sophia from the ACLU. Y'all know her. She's always on the front lines fighting for our rights in the courts. She's going to come and talk to us about strategy. She's going to bring years and years and years of her lived professional and personal experiences to talk to us about what we need to do to be taking on these rulings and pushing for what we know is right. Beloved Sophia, we will toss it to you next.
Thank you, Ash-Lee, and thank you so much for being with us on this, as Janae put it, dark, dark day, dark times. And it is energizing and uplifting to be here with so many people who want to join us as we figure out how to move forward and push for that promise of that multiracial democracy that we have been working for decades. Yesterday's decision is a profound betrayal of the civil rights movement. We need to keep that in mind. In that ruling, the Supreme Court struck down Louisiana's congressional map and gutted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, that primary legal tool that voters of color have relied on to challenge discriminatory maps and fight for an equal voice in this democracy. The Voting Rights Act has long been called the crown jewel of the civil rights movement. That decision was hollowed out yesterday. Justice Kagan, in a dissent she read out loud from the bench, which is an unusual move, called it what it is, a decision that renders Section 2 all but a dead letter. It will be difficult, if not impossible, to enforce in the vast majority of cases. I want to say that out loud because some of the headlines that you may have seen in the aftermath of the decision was that, the Supreme Court tweaked it, it weakened it watered it down, but that's not what we're facing in this moment. And I want to make sure that we understand how significant and how changing this moment is, and that it is a time for us to be coming together and moving forward and calling for a renewed civil rights movement. I want to acknowledge the clients that are here with us in spirit and in person, in body. The Black voters who in Louisiana fought with us for years with extraordinary courage and conviction for the simple right to vote and have their voices heard. Yesterday's ruling, I feel like it was today. Yesterday's ruling was a setback. It is a setback for but their fight is certainly not over, and we will continue to stand with them today, tomorrow, in the years to come, in the days to come, weeks to come, years to come. Now, let me explain what this means beyond Louisiana, because I think we need to keep that all in mind as we're thinking about what does this mean? What kind of movement do we need to build? And it is big, right? Because this is not just about Louisiana. This decision has consequences that reach every corner of this country. We're not just talking about one congressional map. We are talking about congressional districts, state legislative maps, city councils, school boards, every level at which communities of color have fought for true representation. Without Section 2 as an enforceable protection, legislatures across this country will have far fewer legal constraints when they're drawing and manipulating those lines that dilute minority voting strength. Fair districts that took decades and decades of litigation and all of your work to achieve are now at risk. And the communities that lose representation, they don't just lose a seat, they lose a voice on healthcare, education, infrastructure, economic opportunity, whatever it is, you have lost your chance to define that. Let me explain how the court got here a little. Janae talked about this, but while the majority claims to have preserved that test, I cannot overstate some of this for proving racial discrimination. What it has actually done is make partisan goals a wholesale defense for racism. States can now point to partisan objectives to justify maps that strip voters of color of representation, and federal courts will have little basis to intervene. The court has required plaintiffs to show something functionally equivalent to intentional discrimination. And that is the very standard Congress explicitly rejected in 1982. And that's because, as we all know, discriminatory intent is so easily concealed. But we all know it's there. Even when racial discrimination is clear and ongoing, communities right now will be left without the most significant weapon to stop states from drawing maps that dilute their political power. Representation of Black, Latino, Native, and other voters of color will increasingly depend on the goodwill of legislators rather than enforceable law. And we know how that turns out. Politicians, and we'll say this again, should not choose their voters. Voters should choose their politicians, and we're going to repeat that again and again. Yesterday's ruling elevates partisan power over that foundational principle. It's hard to overstate what that means for our communities across the country. I was deeply grieving yesterday about this. We're seeing the ground already moving. Florida just had that special legislative session to pass those new maps. We've seen what has happened during this race to the bottom with the mid-decade redistricting in Texas and Missouri, North Carolina and Ohio. This is not a future threat. It's happening already today. It's accelerated by the decision yesterday. And as Janae pointed out, it's a culmination of this pattern, right? We should call this out as well. Shelby County, Brnovich. I would also point to the Supreme Court's decision in Alexander. This court, and now Calais, this court has progressively stripped away the legal architecture built through the sacrifice of the civil rights movement. And Justice Thomas's concurrence in that decision, I want to flag, signals that at least some members of the court might be willing to go further still. We're already seeing the grave and disenfranchising impact of the decision in a recent emergency order to suspend Louisiana's congressional primaries. These elections are already underway. Many voters are serving overseas, living in our nursing homes, or otherwise needing to vote by mail or absentee have already returned their ballots. Moving the election now means literally erasing their votes. Groups like the Power Coalition have been educating voters for months on these elections, and the change to close primaries in this state. So moving this election right now would cause immense confusion for voters, sow chaos in the election process, all in the name of stripping Black voters of their voting rights. And I have no doubt that these challenges can and should be challenged. It is just blatant what we are seeing right now. The attempt to suspend Louisiana's primary after voting has already begun will disenfranchise eligible voters. We know this. And this appears to be really a shameful attempt to weaponize the court's decision to manipulate an election that is already underway. Overseas voters, disabled voters, and others who have relied on to cast absentee ballots now face that very real possibility of erasure. Any efforts to do this are going to be challenged, and I just want to point out how brazen the actions of state legislators, of politicians have been as the Supreme Court has greenlit these attempts, these opportunities now to take advantage of this moment and try to strip voters of color of their power and to accrue power to themselves. And we must stand in the breach as this is happening. I will point out that many of you are wondering what you can do to protect our democracy. We've talked about a little bit of this in the link. We're dropping a link to in the chat. We're dropping a link to sign up as a democracy defender with the ACLU. So one additional thing that will flag. This will connect you with calls to action you can take to stand up to defend voting rights and access to voting. I'm going to end just and say the promise of a multiracial democracy, the idea that every community has an equal voice in how they are governed, it is worth fighting for. It has never been fully realized. I don't want to suggest that it has, but yesterday's decision is certainly a profound setback in that fight. But I want to say, and that's why we're all here today, we are certainly not giving up on that fight. We will continue fighting in state courts, in legislatures, and in every forum where voters of color are being shut out of our democracy. We do not have to settle for pessimism. Democracy will not fall on our watch. Thank you. I'll pass it back to you, Ash-Lee.
Sophia, we appreciate you. Y'all take a deep breath. I see y'all buzzing in the chat. Pam, I promise you we're going to talk about what's happening tomorrow. It's coming. And for folks that are like, hey, man, like, I get it. I'm just trying to figure out what to do. There have been multiple calls to action already, but let me remind you of a couple that we've been dropping in the chat along the way. One is you can share the LDF social toolkit. Encourage your supporters, your neighbors, your friends to educate each other about the impact of Calais. Part of the reason for the explanation and the re-explanation is that we actually aren't all caught up about the role of this lawsuit and the role of the Supreme Court in totally dismantling even the semblance of democracy in this country. And we can only move as fast as our least understanding beloved. So we're trying to make sure we do that. So this toolkit helps us do that. And it also helps point us in the direction of being able to advocate for fair maps at the local and the state level as the federal government continues to implode at the expense of all of us. You also can check out the Democracy Defenders sign up that Sophia just talked about, which again talks about the work to protect and safeguard coalitions on the state level, helping to support folks to participate in the electoral process. And you can also spread the word and get other people to sign up. There are even more calls to action coming, so I'm going to keep us moving. And again, thank you so much, Sophia, for this breakdown so that we can understand the impacts of the ruling. Thank you, Janae. It's important that we as a movement understand not only what happened, but how it's affecting our communities, Black folks, folks of color, and across all sorts of differences in every nook and cranny of this country. Now, we're going to pivot to hear from folks who actually took significant risk and stepped up to defend the voting rights of Black folks in Louisiana, the clients behind this landmark case. Together, they took their fight for fair representation all the way to the Supreme Court, and that fight will not end with the ruling from yesterday. You're going to hear from Devontae Lewis, who will be followed by Press Robinson. Devontae, I'll toss it to you first.
Well, thank you so much, and it's such a pleasure to join you and to join my dear mentor and friend, Press Robinson, who led this fight. I'm one of the youngest plaintiffs. I was the youngest plaintiff in this Robinson original lawsuit and intervener in Calais. And I'm also the youngest person ever elected to the Louisiana Public Service Commission, a commission that was created in the early 1900s. But until 1992, with a challenge from a VRA complaint, there has been no Black people serving on this board. When I was elected in 2022, I became only the third person ever who is Black to serve on this board. We got our first Black member in 92, the exact year that I was born. So only in my lifetime has Louisiana had a Black member of the Louisiana Public Service Commission. So I understand and am deeply aware of the responsibility that it means in our political process to have representation and to bring change to our community. But what we saw yesterday from the Supreme Court is that they failed in their responsibility to protect the rights of the people of Louisiana and the rights of people all across. And I think Justice Kagan put it best when she said this decision in Section 2 is a dead letter. And that means the court's majority upheld that the rest of us have to prove racial discrimination, and they made now a new way for partisan discrimination to happen. And let's be very clear about it here in the South. You cannot distinguish race from partisanship in the Deep South, making it irresponsible and inconceivable for us to follow their precedent to ensure that Black and brown voters are protected and understand this new partisan mechanism. So this is a devastating blow. But this loss for any person who places value in representative democracy and what that means. And this defeat, everyone, is not limited to just Louisiana. We will see fair districts across the country be challenged and be jeopardized in what they have. And that's from federal, state, and local office. I'll tell you, here in Louisiana, there are very few, if any, Black elected officials who are not serving in a VRA opportunity district, meaning that the Louisiana legislature can wipe out every Black elected official now under this ruling. And we're already seeing them move extremely fast. Just recently, the legislature passed a law to eliminate an elected position where a Black man who was formerly incarcerated and exonerated won an election by 68% to be the criminal clerk of court in New Orleans. And because they didn't like him, they are eliminating the position just days before he's due to sworn in on Monday. And what we saw, and you already heard, our governor just this afternoon suspended the election for the Congress, even though he's keeping the elections for constitutional amendments and other things on the May 16th ballot. He signed a declaration of emergency, which has only been used in Louisiana for hurricanes, for COVID, or for natural disasters that we are so accustomed to, claiming that this was a natural disaster and that we needed to suspend the election to ensure that he and the legislature had enough time before they gavel out a session on June 1st to redraw a map and deny Black representation here in Louisiana. And what is so ironic about what he did is voting's already happening. Absentee ballots went out. Early voting is due to start in 48 hours. But now he is saying that election is suspended. And so while it may feel hard and may feel heavy and it hurts for all of us, but particularly us who've been in this fight as plaintiffs and litigants for over 5 years, but this is not the moment to settle for pessimism. We are going to continue to fight for our multiracial democracy in our legislature, in the courts, in our community, and we will show up for this fight. We must engage everyone. We must mobilize. We got to organize, and we will continue to litigate because the ground is here. It's realizing that our vision, this dream that we've all had that we've never seen come true of a multiracial democracy, we must continue to put pressure to make the dreams of so many become the reality of us all. We must make them see who we are. We must make them hear who we are. We must make them listen to who we are, because justice delayed is definitely not justice denied. So I am not over this fight. This fight is not ending for me, but it is starting the next chapter. It is rebuilding the new vision. It's recreating the next reconstruction, and we will persist. We will one day emerge victorious. And in the words of the old hymn that my great grandmother would always sing to me, We have to fight. Although we got to cry sometimes, y'all, we have to fight. We got to hold up the banner of justice, the banner of equality, the banner of freedom, the banner of what is right until the day we die. This fight is for all of us. And as I pass it on to my fellow plaintiff, Press Robinson, I want to show you how much this fight is intergenerational, multi-generational. Press Robinson, Dr. Press Robinson, was 28 years old when the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed. I was born 28 years later. That shows you that we have to be in this fight together. No matter how old, no matter how young, we continue on and we fight on.
Well, thank you, Devontae, for being the youngest in that group. I guess that makes me the oldest, but that's all right. It's been a pleasure serving with all of the plaintiffs, and I know that our work is not over. The fight just simply never ends. But I want to start today by reminding all of us that the days of the civil rights movement are not buried in our country's history. They are living, they are breathing right now in the hearts and minds of so many of us, especially those of us who remember the movement to establish full voting rights for Black people for the first time in these United States. You know, the Voting Rights Act was widely hailed, as Sophie mentioned, as the crown jewel of the civil rights movement. But even before yesterday's decision, the Supreme Court had already stifled the full might of the Voting Rights Act, most stringent provisions. In many ways, the VRA was a shredded shield. But after yesterday, it's been reduced to scrap metal. The ruling the Roberts Court issued, in my estimation, is the height of hypocrisy. They have issued euphemisms on the state of the Voting Rights Act to cover up the fact that they gutted it in all but name. This is not how our system is supposed to work. You know, and as Janae said, politicians should not choose their voters. Voters should choose their politicians. But this decision was a choice to ignore reality, quite frankly, in favor of a colorblind fantasy. The conservative justices of this court keep using and evoking over and over again. They are attempting to supplant congressional authority and cave to partisan pressure so that they can entrench power in the hands of an authoritarian regime. And that ignorance will directly lead to state governments using partisan gerrymandering as a wholesale excuse to deny Black voters a voice in their government. You've heard what our governor has done as relates to our election, where early voting just starts on this coming Saturday. And you know that voting rights bill that Janae mentioned, it never made it out of committee. It never made it out of committee. It didn't have a chance. This court's decision yesterday threatens to further divide our nation and entrench power in the hands of the few. It puts the diversity of our elected bodies and representation of all communities at risk. And you've heard that this is not going to be limited to just Louisiana or to just the congressional level. It's going to affect every single level of the political process. So while today's ruling narrows our path to justice, we will march on, not only in our states, but in federal courts as well. Our fights for justice just have to be bolder than ever before. As state legislators across the country push these unfair maps, communities must ensure that their voices are heard in the process and that fair maps are the only result. And more than anything, we must vote. More than anything, we must vote. While this decision dealt a blow, the tools we have to fight discrimination, it did not and cannot strip us of our constitutional right to access to the ballot box. It is more critical than ever that we participate, and I like using this term all the time, in every single election. I don't care how small. I don't care when. I don't care how many times you got to vote. Get out and vote. And God knows if it doesn't rain on voting day, because we'll stay at home. But what I want to leave us with is that they can seek to suppress our voices, but they cannot silence us. And let us not forget that.
Brothers, we are so eternally grateful for your courage, for your witness, for taking time after this attack on literally your community to be here to share with us what we should know about this decision and its impact on real life people, and to give us some marching orders. And I know folks are thirsty, that my technocrats in the chat are ready for even more specifics. So we're going to keep pushing to get more of the calls to action out. Brothers, we are so eternally grateful for you. We appreciate you. Y'all, the next speakers are folks that you know because they have been critical leaders in the voting rights movement for decades. Barbara Arnwine and Daryl Jones, specifically organizing mobilizations like this. Is for all you people that are asking about protests, y'all should be paying attention to this. There's specifically been done work that you know, like Good Trouble Lives On. You know some of these folks because you know the Transformative Justice Coalition. Barbara Arnwine has continued to be a relentless advocate for our rights at the ballot box. Before we get to Barbara, first we're going to hear from Daryl. And Daryl's got a special guest that you're going to meet. So over to you, Daryl.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Good evening, everyone. I'm attorney Daryl Jones. I'm the board chair as well as the co-leader of the Transformative Justice Coalition, as well as the president and the founder of the TJC Voter Action Fund. Situated at the core of the Transformative Justice Coalition's community work is the training of future generations of pro-democracy activists. Our goal is consistent with the American goal, to achieve a robust, diverse, multiracial, and inclusive democracy where everyone's voice and vote is heard, encouraged, and respected. The Calais decision was a devastating blow to all of our groups, as well as individuals who work to encourage public participation in our democracy. In our country's history, the Supreme Court has not only made decisions relying upon courtroom litigation by the attorneys, but the courts also have responded to shifts and community demands from the streets of our society. Community pressure is what we call it. Consistent with this understanding, we thought it appropriate to introduce a gentleman that not only witnessed the evolution of the voting rights in America, and America's South in particular, but was one of the original foot soldiers who risked his life in Selma, Alabama, on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on March 7th, 1965, in what became known as Bloody Sunday. It is our pleasure to introduce to you a living legend and a freedom fighter for voting rights who remains on the battlefield for justice today. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet and hear the inspirational words of original foot soldier, attorney Phil Hunter. Brother Hunter, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I'll be reading a little script here. My name is Phil Hunter. I have been an attorney for over 50 years. I'd like to thank Daryl Jones and the Transformative Justice Coalition for inviting me to this meeting tonight. My father, a little background. My father's name was Reverend J.D. Hunter. In Selma, Alabama, he was a member of the Courageous Eight, which meant that men and women who were courageous Selmians who fought tirelessly against white supremacy, domination, and discriminatory practices. Starting in the 50s, he stood up and they were blacklisted for their efforts by the White Citizen Council. He and others were the early freedom fighters who stood in the gap early on in the civil rights movement in Selma. On Sunday, March the 7th, 1965, I joined Congressman John Lewis, Jose Williams, Diana Nash, Miss Amelia Boynton, and hundreds of other peaceful civil rights marchers in Selma, Alabama, to cross that infamous Edmund Pettus Bridge on our way to Montgomery, Alabama. By the way, the bridge is named after a Klansman, the Grand Wizard and ex-Army Major General Edmund Pettus. We assemble and march to protect the unjust police slaying of Jimmy Lee Jackson of Marion, Alabama, who was killed while demanding voting rights as he was protecting his mother and grandfather from being beaten by a state trooper of the Alabama State Troopers Association. I was then 17 years of age, too young to vote, but old enough to know that equal voting rights was paramount to the building of a multiracial, inclusive democracy and society. While growing up in a segregated apartheid city and state. For many of you watching, the brutality of Bloody Sunday was a historical event that ushered in the Voting Rights Act. For me and others, foot soldiers, Bloody Sunday is integral to our identity and is omnipresent in our minds and psyche daily. I vividly remember the tear gas, the beatings, the horses, the crying out, the state police and Jim Clark charging at us with blood in their eyes, wielding billy clubs, trying to inflict maximum harm on us to stop us from walking 50 miles to Montgomery, Alabama, to petition Governor George Wallace, the arch-racist governor, for representation and voting rights. for fair representation and voting rights. As foot soldiers, we were determined to make America live up to its creed and value and respect everyone's right to vote and build a multiracial, inclusive democracy. Learning of the U.S. Supreme Court's recent decision, or as Justice Kagan appropriately wrote in her powerful 42-page dissent, that the court betrays its duty to faithfully implement the great statute that Congress wrote, the Voting Rights Act, was painful to me. Those were her words. The decision was painful for those of us who peacefully laid our bodies on the line for voting and other rights. The pain endured by us who were on the receiving end of brutal police batons pales in comparison to the pain of the majority's decision in Caleb. While the Supreme Court betrayal is a kick in the gut, we have faced overwhelming odds before and have crossed various bridges to achieve and march toward representations and voting rights. In many ways, the Caleb decision is another bridge we must cross. I encourage all of you listening today to find the courage, find the determination, find the unity and the peaceful persistence that we, the original foot soldiers, called upon the power for us to be passing on the Voting Rights Act. I say stand up. This is not the time to sit down and accept a defeatist attitude. I say standing up, let's fight the good fight and renew our spirit and resolve to go forward. Don't shirk or lower your guards now. We must fight, and overcome the challenges today. Let's fight. Put your fighting gloves on with some brass knuckles. Let's fight. God is on our side. I leave you with the words from Isaiah 41, verse 10, which reads, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand." 61 years later, I am still on the battlefield as a foot soldier. God bless you all. Now let's go to work and build the bridge that the Supreme Court thinks it has destroyed. I said think it has destroyed. Let's go. Thank you.
Wow. 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 Thank you so much, Attorney Hunter. Thank you. Eternal gratitude to you and all of the courageous foot soldiers. Thank you for showing us the way forward. We will never forget, and we will do what's required. Folks, you're ready. You want to know what is it that we need to do? Well, let's talk about that. Hi, I am Barbara Unwine, the president and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition. All of us here today, many of us, we are activists, right? That's what we do. And as activists, we are here because we share a long, strong tradition of speaking out to demand that the United States Supreme Court issue opinions that affirm the Constitution's broad mandate for racial equality. When the court has failed, which it has failed over and over and over again throughout history to do so, and as it just did in this wrongful Calais decision, we have turned to our people power, to our unity, to peaceful, nonpartisan, not only education, not only organizing, not only mobilization, but serious street action. It's time for us to do that again, folks. This is our time. In that spirit, we urge everyone who's on this call to join the 2026 John Lewis Good Trouble Lives On National Weekend. You heard me. I didn't say one day of action. I said a weekend of action. We want everybody in these streets, everybody engaged. As we discussed with this recent ruling, the Supreme Court essentially authorized partisan gerrymandering to override Black voters' rights to peaceful, meaningful representation, erasing decades, just decades of progress in a single ruling. People fought, as Phil just reminded us, they bled and they died for these protections. But this court just dismisses all of that sacrifice out of hand with a stroke of a pen. But they forget, as Phil said, this fight is not over. It's not over because we're here. We're determined to move forward. We won't stop. And that's why today we're calling on you that in July, 6 years after the passing of civil rights hero Congressman John Lewis, we will continue to fight for voting rights with Good Trouble. Good Trouble lives on weekend of action. We call it GTLO. That's right. Get it on. We got this year's GTLO is a 3-day national mobilization to honor the legacy of Congressman John Lewis and all of those remarkable foot soldiers, everybody who fought, everyone, Fanny, everyone, Ella, everyone who fought. And we will fight to continue what they set in motion. And we must therefore gather for this 3-day mobilization to honor this legacy by doing what John Lewis loved to do. What did he love to do? He loved to organize. Come on, folks. Let's get some organization going on. What else did he love to do? He loved to be in community. He believed in the beloved community, and he called on all of us to bring our talents to the fore. Don't be sitting back saying, oh, I'm not a lawyer. You don't need to be a lawyer. John Lewis wasn't a lawyer. Come on, folks. You know, Fannie Lou wasn't a lawyer. You just need to have a heart that says, I believe in justice and justice is my creed. I will not be stopped. And I will fight for the future no matter what. So this year's theme for the 3 days is teach. Make sure people know what's going on, that people have the information. Information is weapons. Information is power. Make sure they have that information. Reach. Come on. You got to reach out to every single person and tell them that their dignity lies in their vote. Their dignity lies in their ability to get up and to make sure that their voices are heard and are not silenced. Their dignity lies in their being registered to vote. We got to make sure that on the 3rd day, but throughout this whole time, that we preach. And when we say preach, we're talking about preaching that we want every religious institution of no matter what the denomination is, to make sure that every single congregant is registered to vote, has checked their voter registration, and is doing the vital work of getting out into their communities and canvassing door to door. Come on, folks. When you get out there and canvassing, what do you find? You find that people tell you, I want to vote, but I don't have a ride. Can't we give them rights? They tell you, I want to vote, but I don't know how to do it. I can't go to the polls. I don't know how to do an absentee ballot. Can't you make sure that they get the information? They tell you, I want to vote, but what's this registration stuff? I don't even understand how to do that. Can't you help them? I mean, that's why we're here. Because this democracy is ours. It don't belong to these politicians. It don't belong to these billionaires. It don't belong to these selfish people. It belongs to us. We are the people. This is why we say and we demand hands off our vote. In the face of threats to our vote, this weekend will serve not as the end of the journey. It's a touchstone on our journey to make sure that in 2026 our voting rights are exercised and our voices are heard. So let's do this, people. Let's get out there for voter engagement, community education, and activations to support and remind our families, friends, and neighbors that we still have the power and the freedom to vote. As Congressman John Lewis coined that mighty phrase, good trouble is the act of coming together to take peaceful, nonviolent action to challenge injustice. The power of collective direct action resulted in the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and today, that same collective action can protect voting rights from the challenges posed today. Anchored by beautiful civic engagement and community outreach, alongside faithful leaders, alongside your neighbors, alongside your besties. Let's make sure that this weekend we bring together all community members to continue our sacred fight for our freedom to vote and be heard. It is our responsibility to ensure our communities feel the urgency to exercise our power and to make our voices heard. So here's how you can join us. Come on, you want it? You want it? Here it comes. First of all, we want to make sure that you sign a pledge, that you pledge here and now to take action, to be with us on July 17th through the 19th. Second, we want you to text 3 of your friends, 3 people you know, and tell them that they should take the pledge too. Thirdly, we're going to give you language that you can use in this outreach. If you're saying, "Ooh, I'm not sure how to do all that, but I like the way it sounds," okay, we're going to give you the language where you can do that. And we also want to make sure, and you can text your friends and be sure to send them our Pledge to Act page at goodtroubleliveson.org/pledge to act. Did you hear that? Pledge to act. Not pledge to bowl, pledge to act. Pledge to make the change. Come on now. And the last thing we want to make sure you do is that you join us on our movement call on May 14th. Yes, these are the things you can do. Our movement call on May 14th, where you can sign up, be part of this, where you can learn more about how you host events, more about how you do this canvassing, more about how you do all of these needed tasks in this time, how you make the difference, how you are amazing. Please, to RSVP, to join us, go to goodtroubleliveson.org/launch call. Folks, let's make good trouble. Let's be defiant in the face of denial. Let's make necessary trouble. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. What a fight we're engaged in, but we, as Janae said, are made for this moment. Back to you, Ash-Lee. Thank you.
Whew, if you don't feel fired up and ready to go to teach, preach, make good trouble from now and through the weekend of action, man. So to Barbara, to Daryl, to our original foot soldier hero, we see you, we appreciate you. Y'all, let's just be honest. We couldn't have a call tonight about voting rights without hearing from our next speaker. The incredible Maya Wiley is a champion for civil rights and a leading voice in this movement. She leads the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the nation's oldest, largest, and most diverse civil and human rights coalition. And she's been fighting for our communities. Whether we're in the room or not, I can tell you that if Maya is there, we are there. Maya, thank you for joining us tonight. I'll pass it to you.
Ash-Lee Henderson, you are a treasure. Barbara Arnwine, Daryl Jones, you are fierce. I can't say how powerful Devontae's leadership is, having gotten to see it firsthand on the ground in Louisiana. I want to thank, I don't know what to say about Jania Nelson and Sophia Lakin, except they demonstrate what it means to be a consistent, not just foot soldier, but legal leader that demonstrates that it matters what we do, not just in the streets, which is critical, but also in the courtroom. Janae did us proud in that opinion. And when I read that disgrace, I can only tell you that I thought that Justice Alito should be ashamed because he knew better. All you had to do was hear her argument to know that he knew better. Now, you've already heard from, and I don't even know why I'm talking now because I'm so fired up and it's all been said. You don't need to hear from me. But I will say this, because I am so grateful to be part of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, which is 76 years young, founded in 1950 by and for the civil rights community and movement. And at the time of the passing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it was the coalition that was the leadership conference that was able to take the energy and the activism and the bravery of foot soldiers from Selma and across the country to drive that home that we needed the protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 in order to perfect this union. Because I'm going to say something. We're in No Kings. So grateful for the ACLU and Indivisible for this. So grateful for everyone who organizes No Kings. I'm going to say this. The only way we have a democracy is through civil rights. If there are no civil rights, there is no democracy. If there is no Voting Rights Act, there is no multiracial democracy. And one of the things I want to thank the Supreme Court for proving is it is supremely unjust. It is a disgrace and it has earned the lowest approval ratings that we have seen because it has spent its time and energy in undermining our fundamental rights, in disgracing our Constitution, in forgetting that we fought a civil war, and ignoring the fact and actually intentionally trying to gaslight us in this disgraceful opinion about discrimination in this country. Because when you read this opinion, what it is trying to tell us and what Justice Alito says out loud is there's no evidence of intentional discrimination. Isn't that great? It's an effort to say it doesn't happen anymore. Now, I don't know about you, but I watched the footage on January 6, 2021. I saw not only Confederate flags, we saw the shirts and the symbols of white supremacy and neo-Nazism. And we saw it using violence to prevent the certification of votes from voters. Now, here's the thing. Racism is not dead in this country, and we know it. But we also know the reason we need the activism and the leaders and the brilliance and the energy that you have shown up on this call to reinvest in and recommit yourself to is because you know as well as all of us here that we have power and that power is power we have together, and that the way we rise is together, and that the work we do is in coalition, and that we recognize what Frederick Douglass said in the first Reconstruction, which was the end of slavery, which is power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. And we are here with demands. And Fannie Lou Hamer in the second Reconstruction, who said, nobody is free until everybody is free. When we're walking and marching together hand in hand in No Kings, when we are showing up in the streets, when we're showing up in the courthouse and we're showing up in each other's communities, it is to say it is about all of us. And racism isn't allowed here. And we have power, which is why they're trying to steal it. And we won't have it. So it is a dark day. And as we were reminded by one of the plaintiffs in this case, that it is not our darkest. And not only is it not our darkest, it is not our darkest because we are all here. And how many, Ash-Lee? How many? Okay.
We're still over. We're almost 6,000 people just on one of the YouTube channels right now, Maya.
Okay. And what we did and what we have shown is that our movement grows every time we show up. And that when we show up and say, this democracy is our democracy, this is what democracy looks like, this is what it means to have, save, protect, preserve, build, and move forward, not backwards, with a multiracial democracy. And we are going to remember this. We are down, but we ain't out. Because we have come this far not by faith alone. We have come this far by fighting for our rights. And this is a project, because democracy is not a promise. It's a project. And this project is one that we must fight together. And at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, we say all the time, we are the majority of this country. We look like America. And when we say racial justice, we are speaking for America. So let's shout it together. Not on our watch. Not on our watch. Not on our watch. Thank you.
Y'all, I don't know what to tell you. If you don't feel ready to fight, like lives literally depend on it, after the incredible courage, the incredible vulnerability, and the just generosity of sharing by tonight's speakers, then we've got more work to do. Folks want to know what we're going to do moving off of this call? Well, tomorrow we're going to be out in our communities with our people, not working, not shopping, and not going to school. Anybody down for being May Day strong with me tomorrow? I'm going to see y'all there. If you haven't seen what events are on the map, you can go to maydaystrong.org tonight, find it, and see me tomorrow. I cannot wait to join the millions of people that I know are looking to mobilize tomorrow. And goodness gracious, if SCOTUS didn't just give us another reason to show our economic power and show up and show out for working class people tomorrow. I see y'all, and I'm grateful for all of you that have dropped it in the chat. We're going to be there tomorrow. You are going to sign up for the ACLU's Democracy Defenders work. You are going to sign up and go to the LDF website so that you can see those toolkits and right now start moving work. I'm going to see you all at the John Lewis Good Trouble Weekend of Action. Y'all are going to be there, right? If you've signed up for any of these calls to action, can you just tell me I'm in the chat so I know I'm not talking to my damn self? I know we can do it, y'all. I know we can do it for so many reasons. But to Maya's point, because this isn't even the hardest work we're going to have to do over the next few years, right? This is our opportunity to test our power over the course of the next few months. And I know you want to be down. So we won't complicate things. We're going to make sure you get this recording. We're going to make sure you get the links to the calls to action. I want to remind you, actually, I got some tea. Y'all ready to hear the tea? We have, actually, the numbers are changing by the second. We've got over 370 people already pledged. We've got over 500 folks. So now it's over 500 folks that are taking the pledge. Y'all are blowing the numbers by the second. You could actually, if you haven't done it, you could do it right now. We're going to keep dropping the links in the chat. So we've got folks taking the pledge. We've got 400-ish people signed up for the May 14th call, I believe, already, Barbara. We're doing it. We're doing it right now. Y'all, I don't believe in doing these calls so that we're intellectually more intelligent people. I don't do this so that you just feel inspired. I do this so we can build movements that can win. I want power, y'all. Don't you want to win? Don't you want to win so we never have to get on another emergency call again for the rest of our existence and the existence of our future descendants? Don't you want to build people power? I was taught that the way that you do that, they have this little song and chant that says, what are we going to do to make the people rise? And the response is educate, motivate, organize. If you want to know what I'm trying to do, to beat back the attack that the Supreme Court and others are taking out on my community as a Black Southerner, I'm going to educate, I'm going to motivate, I might do a little agitating, and I'm going to organize, right? And I'm going to invite you to do it with me. Y'all, I know we are 22 minutes after the hour. I want to remind folks that the Voting Rights Act didn't happen overnight. You heard from Brother Phil, our OG, on the call, that people literally, some of them still with us. What a gift to have Phil on this call. Y'all don't even know what a gift it is to have an OG, a person who fought and bled, knowing people that died for these protections and more for decades. Some of our communities have been literally fighting back these authoritarian attacks for centuries in this place. Y'all, we got the Voting Rights Act because of the dedication, the rigor, the commitment of decades of work, centuries of heroic organizing from brave people who were not fearless, but were courageous despite their fear. Civil rights greats who you know, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, but maybe Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, but also literally millions of names whose names you will never know are the reason that we got a Voting Rights Act enacted in the first place. As imperfect as it too might have been, but it ended Jim Crow at the ballot box as we had known it for centuries, right? That work is going to be challenging because of this decision. If you don't understand anything else, know that that work, the work to make sure that all of us have equal representation, is going to be harder because of this decision. But let me tell you what I know good, as my daddy would say. We were built for such a time as this. If you've got faith, awesome. If you're like, I don't do that faith stuff, but you will go out and chant, ain't no power like the power of the people because the power of the people don't stop, or I believe that we will win, then you telling me that you got faith in the people, and that's enough for me. Democracy will not fall on our watch. In fact, the only possible way that the blank check promise of democracy in this country that's never been fully achieved in the first place is going to come to pass is because we're going to practice it. We are going to will it so. We are going to be the midwives that make it so. So tonight, we discussed some tangible ways that folks can take action through signing up to be an election defender, to recruiting your friends to the pledge to make good trouble, to joining the Good Trouble movement call on May 14th, showing up to May Day Strong. As a reminder, we're going to send one more thing to the chat, a sample text that you can use to text your friends in the chat, in your group chats, individuals that you might want to reach out to. We're going to give you a script that you can just copy and paste from the chat. And I want you to be sure to send them to the Pledge to Act page. Again, if you missed that link, it is goodtroubleliveson.org/pledge to act. All lowercase, all one word. goodtroubleliveson.org, right? /pledge to act. And please sign up for the movement call on May 14th, where you're going to learn even more about what's planned for the weekend of action and how you can plug in to RSVP. To join us, you go to another link, goodtroubleliveson.org/launch call. In the words of some of our elders and ancestors, many of whom said things like, by any means necessary means by all the ends. I invite you to the many multi-tactical ways that you can show up and show out for our people. In fact, Frantz Fanon once said that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. I think we've heard from our speakers what our mission ought to be, and now they have called us into an invitation to fulfill it. Y'all, we cannot be neutral on this moving train. I want to invite you to not betray it, to love the people so that we don't betray the people, as Chokwe Lumumba once said. In the words of Justice Thurgood Marshall, this is our democracy. Any semblance of it will be because we made it so we practiced it. It's a doing thing. We must make it, protect it, and pass it on. I love you, I respect you, and I want you to be free. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you in the streets.